Hey, my friends. So welcome to the second video in our May Blissipline for our May Blissipline practice, which is love versus fear and finding ways to come from love, choose from love, honor ourselves with love, etc. So the second video, I'm focusing on specifically how trauma affects our capacity to do this practice and this kind of practice. And this is really, really, really important. Now, if you don't have any trouble doing these kinds of practices and you don't feel this applies to you, feel free to just skip this one. Absolutely no need to focus on stuff that is not important to you. But I'm making this for all the people who I know are in this group who just feel like they're constantly kind of battling themselves, or parts of themselves are battling them, or they feel overwhelmed, or they feel like their nervous system is stuck in fight or flight, or they know they have trauma. So this is a very, very, very broad topic, and there's no way I'm going to address even a fraction of it in this little video here, but I'm going to do my best to address it in such a way that you might find it a little supportive, okay? All right. So, so trauma, what the heck is trauma? When I'm talking about it right now, I'm talking about it spanning from like complex PTSD all the way through maybe smaller things that nonetheless stop you. As we know, trauma lives in the body. It's a body experience. Trauma healing works through the body. And I am trained as a trauma healing therapist. My particular protocol that I work with is somatic experiencing, which is really powerful and really effective. And I've seen it work really well for people. That's not really what we're going to do here, because we can't do that in this kind of context. It's just not really possible. But there are elements of it that I think are really, 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 really important. Okay. So I think it's helpful to think of trauma as a form of conditioning. Conditioning is what happens to us that leads us to have certain patterns. So for example, my accent is something I am conditioned into having. I have this accent because of how I grew up and where I grew up, etc. Other things about me are conditioning. Like, for example, I really like Marmite. And the reason I like Marmite is I grew up in England. And in England, children are fed Marmite and you learn to love it. And most of my American friends are like, oh God, that's disgusting. So that's conditioning. Now, I think it's useful to think of it this way because we tend to think of it in a more identity-based way, like, oh, I love Marmite. I'm a person who loves Marmite. And this isn't inaccurate, but we neglect to notice its conditioning. We take it on as a sort of like a personality or an identity. So trauma is a form of conditioning. It's a form of conditioning that caused things to be hooked up in certain difficult ways. So at its simplest, and this is not the whole story, as I said, this is a way bigger thing than we can talk about here, but at its simplest, we learn to associate one thing with another thing. That's what conditioning is, like Marmite yum or Marmite yuck, right? But with trauma, we have this experience where something gets connected to fear, or something gets connected to overwhelmment, or something gets connected to some massive nervous system response. So at its simplest, this is conditioning within the body. Now, when this has gone on a long time, when we are talking about chronic conditioning, for example, childhood situations that are dangerous, or just like long-term neglect, it does not have to be dramatic abuse to have a profound effect on us. What happens is a lot of our patterning begins to develop. Our development works around these traumas. And so we develop skills that for the young person that we were who was developing them were really brilliant survival strategies. They are how we survived as young people. But as adults, they've become patterns that can really get in our way. And one of these that is very, very common in people who have a trauma history is hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is when you are constantly on alert. And what can happen is you get to a point in your life where your nervous system is just on all the time, on all the time. And so you can try and calm down. You can be in a calm situation where nothing really is going on, but your nervous system cannot let go, because when you were a child, for example, it doesn't matter how calm the situation was. You never knew if the dangerous adult was going to show up at any time, or things like that. So the nervous system gets trained into these behaviors. And unfortunately, another super, super common result of childhood trauma is self-criticism and self-hate, self-loathing. The wonderful teacher Sherry Huber simply refers to it as self-hate. And I am only hedging on that because for some people, they're like, I don't hate myself. I'm just trying to be a better person. And honestly, I would have said that too before I did my trauma healing work. So if that's you, let's call it self-criticism. But if you know you're extremely hard on yourself in any way at all, particularly if you say things to yourself that you would never say to another adult, like, God, you're so stupid, or you're so pathetic, or anything like this, this is unfortunately a really common result of trauma. And again, it's actually a complicated survival strategy on the part of our young self. It was a brilliant survival strategy at the time. It's probably why you're alive today. However, as an adult, it can be very, 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 very limiting. So briefest of little overviews there, but I thought I'd mention hypervigilance and self-hate, because when we try and apply this question of, am I choosing from love or fear, it can get really tangled up. So for example, what is love? If you have been raised in such a way that you were criticized all the time, or what you needed or wanted was unavailable, or you were made to feel stupid for being who you were or wanting what you wanted, love will be conflated with all kinds of other things. And so I have never really given up the word, even though I know this, when I think about this practice, because I do think when we encounter our natural internal loving self, we do know it. So I don't want to abandon it, the word. But that doesn't mean you can't use other words. So for example, you can substitute any of the words that we put on the other end of the scale. Do you remember last week we talked about this continuum scale? And so on the love end was curiosity, right? That's a kind of a love. Hopefulness, self-care. So there's many other things you could substitute for the word love in these questions. And remember, again, we're looking at these two questions. The first question is, am I choosing from love or fear? Am I choosing from love or fear? And so we ask that question, and the brain says, I don't know what love is. Love, what is this love? I don't love anything, blah, blah, blah. I'll just tell you that's fear, by the way, if the brain is doing that. But if you have been conditioned into hypervigilance, fear is the ground you stand on. Fear is the water you swim in. So then you just acknowledge it. You say, okay, got it. Fear, I can feel the fear. I can feel the question triggers fear. Okay, got it. Remember, the okay, got it is this essential allowing, the art of allowing. And then come to the question, if I were choosing from love, you could ask yourself, okay, so what else might be possible for me? Is there any version of this that is at the love end of the spectrum? You see, so we become a little gentler with the question. We could even say to ourselves, what if there is a way to look at this that honors me, that is respectful to me, that is gentle to me? Is there room for self-love in this moment? Now, I just want to be really, 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 really clear. Everybody wants to practice this on the hardest thing. because that's where you want the most help. You're like, oh, help me with this hardest thing. But it's the hardest place to do it. It really is. And it is just like everything else. If you're going to play the piano and the first time you're going to practice something is in front of people, it's going to be stressful. You need to have time by yourself to sort it out, think it through. The first time you're going to do it is on stage. If you're going to play a sport, if the first time you're going to play it is going to be in a game with other people, um, so sometimes that's fine. Don't get me wrong. Feel free to play whatever sport, throw yourself into it. But when you're doing something really difficult, don't do the hardest version first. Just stop, practice it in small ways, like getting up in the morning. Maybe you'd start to notice yourself hurrying in the morning. You say, whoa, hold on. Am I coming from love or fear? You can feel it. You don't even have to ask that question. You're like, I'm feeling fear. Okay. And you stop and you say, okay, God, it's very important. In fact, you can even add to, okay, got it. Of course you feel that way. Of course you feel that way. We bring compassion to this traumatized self that it lives in fear so much. Of course you feel that way. Okay, okay. And all we're saying in of course you feel that way is you came by this honorably. You came by this honorably. This was conditioning that occurred because you lived a difficult life. So we honor the feelings. We don't gaslight ourselves. We don't say, you shouldn't feel this way. You say, no, I get it. You feel this way. You came by this honorably. So we care for ourselves in the okay, got it. It's like, all right, yes, I see you feel that way. And then in the second part of the question, we bring some gentleness to it. We bring the space to say, what if there's some way I could do this? So just this getting up in the morning thing, right? And you find yourself hurrying and like, what if I could do this in a way that would feel better to me? Is there a way I could do this in a way that was loving to me? We are just basically beginning to stop and reclaim our sovereignty in simple moments. And so, yeah, if you're going to try and do this on the hardest thing, it's not going to be easy. But if you can do it on the smaller things, what you begin to see is that there are ways it can soften. Whereas you can see, what, I'm hurrying when I don't need to. Another characteristic of trauma is false urgency, a feeling of false urgency. This is because the nervous system is on high alert, right? Hypervigilant. We're like, oh, I got to respond to that, right? This false urgency. And there's real urgency too, don't get me wrong. But one of the qualities is this false urgency. And so if we do the thing where we stop and we say, okay, hold on. And I used to say, hold on, Mary. It took me a long time to work through this stuff. I just want you to know this is not something I just think, yeah, I woke up one morning feeling good. No, I had to work hard at it, right? So I would say, okay, hold on. And then whatever your version of the question is, if you can go, if I were choosing from love, what would I do? And then the conditioned mind says, what the fuck? I don't need my love. What is this shit? I don't want to do. Say, okay. And you just be gentle with yourself. Of course you feel that way. Of course. Okay. Hold on. We're not trying to gaslight ourselves. We say, okay, I see you feel that way, but we say, okay, but is it possible I don't have to do this right this moment? That's the false urgency piece, right? And you think, well, maybe I don't. And you begin to reclaim your sovereignty. Reclaim your sovereignty. So one of the things I want to be really clear about is Blissipline. There's been a lot of talk about toxic positivity in the last few years. And I will be honest, I think there's way more toxic negativity than toxic positivity, like boatloads more. However, there is a version of positivity that is toxic. And that is when we gaslight other people or ourselves. When we say, you shouldn't feel that way, you don't feel that way, you don't need to feel that way. Where we basically say to people, your feelings should be different. In Blissipline, what we do is we honor our feelings. We say, yes, I feel this way. Am I choosing from fear? Okay, got it. Okay, got it. Remember from last time, first we acknowledge. And then eventually that becomes acceptance. I understand that I feel this way. I recognize makes sense given how I was brought up. I accept that I'm this way. And then we bring self-love. So first self-acknowledgement, then self-acceptance, then self-love. And in self-love, we can say, okay, yes, I am this way. And what if we can do this differently? We do it kindly, okay? So toxic positivity is when we gaslight ourselves, but it doesn't need to be toxic if we will honor ourselves and still be willing to imagine we could do it better. Okay, let me just check my notes to see if I've forgotten anything in here. Yes, so one of the tools of softening the question is what I like to call the positive what if, where you just gently say, well, what if it could work out? What if this could be different? What if I could feel a little bit better? You know, remember on the range in the first video, and if you haven't watched that, you really should watch that because this is all based on that. In the first video, we had this range and we didn't expect you to jump from here to here. You go from here to here or here to here and here to here. And every step along the way, there's a feeling of relief. There's a feeling of relief. But every step along the way is first the acknowledgement of where you are. Ah, I notice, I feel this. Okay, got it. Okay, got it. I want to add that even with trauma, there is a natural movement toward well-being within the organism that is us. And somatic experiencing as a trauma healing protocol recognizes this. And let me just give you a little brief info on that. So here I have a little scratch on my finger. And this cat, I have this jerky cat. He's traumatized, and he scratches me sometimes. He just reaches out and scratches. Such a jerk. So anyway, he scratched me the other day, but now it's no pain and it's healing. And in another few days, it will be gone. The body has a natural tendency toward healing. I do not have to go in and heal it. Obviously, I might clean it or something like that first just to make sure it's got a chance, but the body has a natural tendency towards healing. And if the wound is more significant, then sometimes we have to help a little bit more. But this body still has a natural tendency towards healing. I had to have stitches here to sew my hand at one time, and they had to pull these skin together here. You know, there's all these tendons and stuff here, and I really doubted if this would ever heal. For years it was like this, it wouldn't straighten, but slowly, I got it back to the point where it functions perfectly. And that's the body's tendency to heal. Now, we did pull the edges together with stitches, you know, so we did a little bit more to help, but actually they left it open because they wanted it to be able to not get infected. And so my body created brand new skin, brand new everything, covering up these tendons, and allowed the tendons to work so it could straighten my finger out again. So this is the body's natural tendency to heal. And what I want to tell you is the nervous system also has a tendency to heal. The nervous system has a natural tendency to heal. And what happens is, and somatic experiencing teaches us this, as we learn to come back to this moment and honor how we feel. We say, yes, of course you feel that way. I understand. I get it. You feel this way. I feel this way. I feel this way. Of course I feel this way. And we practice the depth of, okay, got it. Then what happens is that little bit of relief from just honoring ourselves is all the space the nervous system needs to do just a little bit of healing, just a little bit of healing, just a little bit of healing. And just like this took a while, it took a while, that takes a while too, but it is the nervous system's natural tendency toward healing. Okay, so Blissipline does not pretend we don't have trauma. Blissipline does not ignore the fact that we have trauma, but it does give us an option to not just give into it, but to honor our personal experience and allow that honoring to move us in the direction of well-being. So that's my little starting point on this. I'm going to just say one more thing in case anybody wants to consider exploring this. Somatic experiencing is a trauma healing protocol that is basically done one-on-one. And I did it for many, I do it, I've done it for many years. But in the last maybe 3 years or so, I've been doing it in a group. And I wanted to see if it could work in there. And the answer is it works beautifully in there. And so there is work that we are doing together in a group, in the Continuum group. And if you would like more information on that, I'm going to go ahead and put the link in this video so you can have a look and see if that's something that you might want to consider joining us in. So you are not alone, my friends. You are not alone. Loneliness is one of the hardest things that we face. But in the Continuum group and the Blissipline group, there is a space for you to bring yourself. But I really, really strongly encourage you, don't just sit in the story of your trauma. Bring the full story of you to any moment and then say, okay, got it. Honor it for yourself. Honor it for yourself. And then ask, how can I turn towards what I want? How can I turn toward positive? What if I could improve this 1%? What if there's a way out? You see, we get so caught in the story of our trauma that it just keeps reproducing this. We don't need to. We allow it. We tell the truth of how we feel. Then we say, okay, got it, and we stop. And the second question, the love or fear question, is one of those examples. If I were choosing from love, what would I choose? Okay, I can't handle that question. All right, if I were choosing from curiosity, let's try that. Maybe your brain will go, oh, well, honestly, and then notice how it feels. You'll feel it. You'll feel it, and you'll begin to feel what it means to feel that sort of presence that I'm going to keep calling love, because I think that is at the center of our nature. Okay? All right. Comment below. Let me know what you think. All right.